Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Calgary, Alberta. Tuesday morning, October 26th. I'm happy to be here. This is one child abuse survivor to another, and we're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and chat room is open if anybody would like to sit in there. I have the link in there this morning for the website there, angerresources.com, and I want to continue looking at that. This is really an awesome website, for anybody who might, anger might really affect your life, and you might be feeling like, how do I get control and manage my anger sort of thing, right? I know for me it's very, very helpful. And, I was stuffing a lot of my anger, and that was the problem. Like, it was really destroying me, and because I didn't want to be abusive, right? So I'm having to learn how to deal with all this stuff. So I find this website extremely helpful. So, I would highly recommend everybody, go take a look at it. It's http www.angerresources, ANGERESOURCES, angerresources.com. And it's Dave Decker and Michael Obsatz. And, they have a little piece on there about themselves and articles from both of them. Like Michael Obsatz has his own articles, and then they have, and Dave Decker has his own articles. And then they have links and all kinds of stuff, for seminars and books and just all kinds of information on there. So I hope you will go check that out. We've been looking at this now for a few weeks, and I just find I don't think we'll we might spend another few days on it, maybe the rest of this week, and then we'll move on. But I just think it's so interesting to take a look at it because it's really helpful for me. It's helping me to learn how to manage my anger, so that I'm not, hurting people or even hurting myself. So this whole issue of self-sabotaging, adult survivors of child abuse might not even realize sometimes that we are self-sabotaging, which has happened to me. Was self-sabotaging many times and didn't realize it. And until it was pointed out to me that I was self-sabotaging, and then I was like, oh, I guess I am. So this is the thing, if you're used to living a certain way and things just always seem to be ending up, badly, especially, regarding our anger management issues, then we can learn to change this stuff, and we can learn to look at things differently and learn how to keep ourselves in check, so that we're not abusers or becoming abusive towards people or being so passive that we're being run over. That's another big one for adult survivors of child abuse, and for people who have survived abuse of any kind, whether it's domestic violence or anything like that, right? Because we all quite often don't want to hurt people, so then we become passive, and then we end up getting hurt again. So that's the whole thing, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to be re-victimized, right? So it's a great website, and I thank everybody for tuning in. We'll be on for half an hour this morning. I'm not a counselor or therapist. I say this on every show. I'm just a person who pays to do my own blog talk shows because I just want to be one more voice for people out there. I know there's lots of voices out there, and I'm so thankful that there is. It's the silence, I think, is the issue. People just feel like, they're so alone, and that, there's no help or no hope for them, and that's the sad thing because there really is. You have to reach out, though, and that's what happened to me. I find, I had to reach out to get help. And before that, I was just trying to deal with all of this stuff, on my own. Not I would tell a few people in my life what had happened to me and my family, but I never went to any counselors or therapists, or I never sought any adult survivor groups for child abuse survivors, and I never reached out and got any help, right? So I suffered alone in this for a long, long time, and I was miserable, and I could still enjoy life and parts of life, day-to-day bits and pieces, but I always came back to the same place every night, to that place of despair and kind of feeling very much alone and was just hurting, you know what I mean? And I started to reach out, and I things just changed, I was just really surprised how many hands reached out to me saying, you can do it. You didn't deserve that, and you did not deserve to be abused as a child, and we can do this, right? Pulling me along with them. So I'm so happy that I finally reached out and got some help, and so I just wanted to be one more voice, really, to say, we can do it, but we really have to be responsible for our own healing journey as adults, right? As children, we can't really help, but what happened to us, it really wasn't in our control as children to we're sort of just stuck with what we get, as kids, right? And then as adults, we're not. we have every reason to be looking out for ourselves as adults and not expecting somebody else to do that for us. I was always thinking somebody else should come along and just say, "Hi, I'm here to help you." You know, I'm here to take away your pain, and that's what I was wishing. I was just wishful thinking that somebody would show up at my door and it would just be this great friend, and they would just take away my pain, and that's what I was thinking. And it was so unrealistic. You know what I mean? And finally realized that I was going to have to do this myself. And I started to really do a lot of self-help and working with coping lists and working on self-esteem issues and the whole learning how to love myself and learning how to appreciate, myself for who I am, love the things that are, just to really get in touch with myself and to begin to accept myself. Because as an abused child, I was rejected, and then I rejected to my inner child too. I rejected that abused child, right? And because I didn't know how to help her, and I was always and she was always screaming and raging, you know what I mean? And I just didn't really know I was even supposed to get in there and try to help her out. So that's the thing. It's been an awesome few years here because I'm in such a better place than I was even 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago. So that's the thing. I hope everybody will just reach out and get some help, no matter if it's getting a counselor, a therapist, group support, online group support, whatever you have to do. Call a crisis line. Just get some help, and don't suffer alone in silence. That's a very sad place to be. And I just know too many people now who are survivors who were in the same boat, and they reached out, and they're just doing so much better, So it's just, I don't know, it's such a positive thing, and that's what we need in our lives, positive stuff, things to be feeling good about, right? And so it's just awesome. So I just want to be one more voice. I'm not a professional counselor or therapist, and you have to listen at your own discretion. I'm talking about abuse, and it's a very sensitive topic, and if you're a survivor and haven't come very far in your healing, it could trigger you. Any program like this, anything you read online, TV shows, just anything can trigger a person who's survived child abuse, and you have to be very careful what you're listening to and know whether you're safe in a safe enough place to listen so that you won't hurt yourself or hurt somebody else. And so I always ask people to listen at their own discretion to my show and know what's good for you to listen to. And if it makes you uncomfortable, turn the show off. And if you're a young person under the age of 18, you need to have permission to listen to my show because it's mainly about stopping child abuse and adult survivor issues. And there's a lot of adult content on my shows. And I believe in protecting children at all costs, and I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and we work really all the time, round the clock, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to protect children's rights, to stand up, and speak out against abuse and stand up for the rights of the child, right? And so you do have the right to be protected, and so you have to know how to keep yourself safe online. It's very important because if you look around at the information that's out there, the FBI and whatnot, ICAC, they have websites that talk about just how many child sexual predators are out there at any given time online trying to get a hold of children, right? And it numbers in the hundreds of thousands at any time. So they're in chat rooms. There are places where young people would go online to chat and stuff, and they try to get information out of you, and then that will lead them to you, and then they, sometimes what they do is they actually get you to meet them somewhere, and then you do thinking it's a 12 or 14-year-old teenager, and it turns out that it's a sexual predator, and they assault these children or they kill them, right? So you don't want to be a victim. No, you don't. You want to keep yourself safe, and you want to make sure that you have permission to listen to my show or any show like this when you're sitting in a chat room, and let somebody know, an adult know what you're doing online, so they can help to keep you safe, right? And you need to keep yourself safe, You need to know how to do that. So just type into your browser online safety, internet safety for children, or just internet safety for families, things like this. And it'll bring up a lot of websites that have great information on there on how to keep yourself safe when you're online, okay? Just in case you don't know that stuff already, right? So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll get right into this article here. And this is Taking the Steps to Stop the Abuse from Dave Decker. And it's a pretty lengthy article, so we'll just probably get into it here this morning. But it's a good one. It was really talking about, sort of gives a real look at what's behind the mentality of abuse and domestic violence. and abuse of any kind, really, right? So I'm just going to read right from the page here, and you can go there too, and that's www.angerresources.com/steps2-stopabuse.html. And it says, one would hope that our homes could be safe havens for women, children, and men, but all too often they are not. Domestic abuse is an epidemic in this country. It is estimated that 2 to 4 million American women are battered each year by their husbands or multiple intimate partners. Intimate partners, it says. And sadly, in the United States, a woman is more likely to be assaulted, injured, raped, or killed by a male partner than by any other type of assailant. That was from Brown and Williams, 1987. It says it makes no sense to continue to go on this way. It says sometimes male clients have said to me, because he's a counselor, like he's a therapist, right? If you go and check out About Us on there, they actually have a little piece on each of them and what field they're in and what they specialize in. And so they see people, they see patients, right? And so Dave Decker says, sometimes male clients have said to me, well, wait a minute, Dave, what about all the abuse that my wife does to me? And quote unquote, in reality, it is true that women can also be controlling and abusive in relationships with partners, saying and doing hurtful, disrespectful, punishing, and demeaning things. In fact, 3 national surveys by researchers Gels and Strauss in 1975, 1985, and 1992 found that women used violence even more frequently than men in familial situations. So, you know, and I know that firsthand. Everybody that listens to my show knows that my mom was my main abuser, and my dad was also abusing me as well, but my mom was my main abuser and was also, she was abusive towards my dad too. So it wasn't just my dad abusing her. It was the two of them abusing each other, right? And a lot of people think it's only generally the women, the men that are abusers and the women are the victims. It's just not true. Especially, you know, because a lot of people just, thank God, have not grown up abused, right, or in a domestic violence situation. So they just think it's because society portrays it just being men all the time who are abusers, which is just not the fact. It's not the case. But there are, however, more women being abused. Because of the amounts are way, towards the side of the women. There's more women victims of domestic violence, but there's a lot more men that are victims too that no one knows about because they don't report it. But that's another topic. But anyway, it says, but especially when domestic abuse escalates to threats and physical violence, it is my belief that there is a significant difference between men and women. So he's talking here about this. He says, my partner is 5'4" and 125 pounds. I'm 5'9" and 180 pounds. If my partner hauls off and smacks me in the face, I may be angry, annoyed, and irritated with what she has done. But I will not feel fearful, humiliated, and intimidated if I make the decision to use physical force with her at that point or any other. She is much more likely to experience fear, terror, humiliation, intimidation, and domination. She does not have the ability to hurt me physically in the way that I could hurt her. And part of what Gels and Strauss found was that men are 7 times likelier to actually injure their partners when there was physical violence. It says, because of size, musculature, and socialization, most women in heterosexual relationships cannot compete with their male partners once physical conflict begins. It says, when we as men go to using physical force with our partners, we are much more likely to be able to control and dominate a relationship through threats, intimidation, and violence than our partners are. In addition, other types of abusive behavior, including sulking, name-calling, put-downs, cussing and swearing, slamming doors, and punching walls, take on an additional impact. Partners and children don't need to be reminded that those same behaviors were part of an escalation to physical violence the last time they occurred. And it says volatile anger and abusive behavior are always destructive in an intimate relationship and always lead to loss of trust, respect, safety, and intimacy. And I mean, that's just so true, right? I mean, it's just horrible what this stuff does to people. I grew up like this. I knew so many people who were growing up like this. I knew people, in my adult life who lived their lives like this with their partners. I was even doing some of this too when I met my sweetheart that I'm still with here today. Well, even a couple of other relationships that I had prior to. I haven't had that many relationships, because I just don't trust people. But, I actually did manage to have a couple of relationships, and I was the one who was doing the volatile behavior because I was doing what my mom showed me how to do. I just took on her behavior, right? So smashing dishes and throwing things around, sulking and pouting and name calling, and I wasn't punching walls, but I was definitely slamming doors, cussing and swearing, throwing things at my partner, you know, using threats, all kinds of threats, you know. And I was the abuser, right? And the thing is I was just trying to protect myself, right? And I mean, this is how sad this is, right? I was just protecting myself. And I just thought that was the only way I was going to be able to protect myself, was if I was the one to take over the situation. And I think maybe that's why, you know, some people do that. But then my boyfriend was like, "Man, you're abusive. You know, I don't even like your behavior." And he would talk to me about it, and I would just be like, "Wow, I guess I am behaving badly." And then I remembered back to the stuff that my mom would do, smashing dishes and throwing pots and, you know, throwing things at people. She was always she was just famous for throwing coffee at you, you know, like cups of hot coffee, right, or cold coffee, didn't matter, right? So, but she would just throw the whole cup. Like, she wouldn't just toss the coffee at you. I mean, she'd throw the cup and all. And I mean, she was just vicious, you know. So it was at any time, you know, a bunch of broken dishes. I don't know how we stayed up, you know, how we managed to get more dishes all the time, because my mom was famous for breaking dishes and throwing things, and, you know, very, very vicious, that woman. And so I just learned how to be like her, you know. And it's so destructive into a relationship. It really is. And then I had friends who treated their partners like this. You know, and it's so many people live like this, and it's always this heightened, you know, sense of, I don't know if maybe they get some sort of an arousal out of it, but whatever it is, it's not right. It's abusive and it's wrong. And if there's children in the home, they are going to be freaked out by it. You better believe it. And if they learn that it's just normal, they'll just continue to move. They'll just continue to do it themselves. And that's a whole cycle of abusive behavior, just being passed on one generation to the next. So, you know, we have to be responsible for our behavior. You know, if we want people to treat us with respect, then we have to be treating people with respect. You know, if we want people to be good in our lives and not abusive and not abusive in any way to us, then we have to be just as diligent to not abuse other people and let our anger get so out of control. Like, we are always in control. There's no such thing as letting our anger get out of control. It's just that's what people always say. But we're in control. We got to stop using anger to abuse people, because that's just incredibly wrong. We're going to get angry, but there's ways to handle it where we don't have to fly off the handle and go to the extreme, right? Which is what, you know, I was always doing, and that's what I learned how to do, was take everything to the extreme, because that's what my parents did. And so, you know, my life, of course, it was kind of a high, because I was always living on the edge of the extreme, right? And so then that's bad for teenagers, right? Because then they need to be feeling the extreme all the time, or it's just something's just not right. So, I mean, I used to engage in dangerous behaviors as a teenager. Was always looking for the dangerous stuff, you know, whether it was drugs or, you know, whatever it was, right? Running around in the middle of the night and getting in trouble and stealing and things like this, you know, racing my cars, just things that, you know, looking for the danger, right? But that's because when you grow up in that, it's almost like a high, right? It's intense, you know. So when you're used to that and it just becomes part of your life, you kind of just got to keep it up, you know. And for, you know, just me sitting around just being normal, I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to just sit back and relax and just take in the scenery or breathe or anything else, because I was so used to being around this volatile, abusive anger, you know, behaviors, right? And that's what this is so destructive to people, and it's so destructive to relationships. So we'll keep reading here. It says, although abuse and violence may work on a short-term basis to get what you want and control a person or situation, in the end it is never helpful in arriving at constructive problem-solving and conflict resolution that leaves both parties feeling okay about what has just transpired. Because of our ability as men to control through the use of threats and violence, it is up to us, from my perspective, to take the initiative to make sure that abuse and violence are not a part of the relationships we have with our partners and children. So he's talking as a man here, because he's a man, and he's talking about the whole issue with men. And you know, you can kind of, I mean, I'm looking at it as a woman, so I can see where it's the same thing for the women. You know, we have to keep our own behaviors in check if we want to have a healthy relationship with people. And that's this whole issue where, you know, the people will get court ordered to have to go to counseling, you know, for anger management and stuff if they get brought up on domestic violence charges, or, you know, let's say they get brought up and charged with child abuse and neglect or whatnot. They're told to go get anger management counseling. Well, it's because they do need it, you know. And, a lot of people, I mean, I would hope that they would go get some help, right? Because our relationships with other people don't have to be abusive. We can still learn how to be assertive, like Dave Decker was talking about yesterday in those articles. We don't have to be abusive to get what we need or to present what we need. We can do that in healthy ways by learning to be assertive instead of abusive, right? So that's the whole issue. And as a survivor of child abuse, it's something that I have to do because I don't want to hurt people and I don't want to hurt myself, right? And so I have to learn how to be assertive without, and still, not be walked all over, being too passive or whatever. I just need to learn how to be assertive but not abusive, right? And so that's what so many people need to learn how to do, right? Because things will come up that will make us angry. Anger is normal. It's natural. It's actually sometimes a defense, right? To tell us that something's wrong. It's obviously something is wrong or we wouldn't be feeling that way. But then we have to learn how to properly, relate that to our brain so that we can say, how am I going to handle this effectively? Am I going to lash out and become abusive, or am I going to be assertive and not abusive, right? And we really have to stop and make that decision. I think a lot of people who have these issues, who have these anger management problems, it's just all too easy to punch a wall or start name calling or sulking or throwing things around or hurting people or hitting people, right, to get our way, right? And that's just the easy way. To me, that's like a cop-out. It's kind of like, there's other ways to handle things. And that's the whole issue with the child abuse. That bothers me because parents, a lot of times people say, it's not abuse, that was discipline. It's like, that's such a cop-out for proper parenting. It's like, you want to beat on your children. Why don't you just start by getting some education yourself as a parent and straightening up, and then teach your children properly, and you wouldn't have to beat on them. You know what I mean? It's absolutely ridiculous that people think that that's the way to do it. Yeah, physical punishment. Yeah, that's right. This is what I'm speaking out against. I can't stand it. It makes me sick to my stomach that people think that it's okay to hit somebody. It is not. As a matter of fact, it is never okay. You know what I mean? Just to lash out and hit your partner or hit your children or, you know what I mean, hit your neighbor. It's not okay, right? And that's the whole issue with this, this abuse stuff. You know what I mean? It's not okay to verbally berate your children. It's not okay to emotionally abuse your wife. None of that stuff is okay. But yet society says it's okay. And that makes me so angry when people minimize abuse and minimize what this stuff does to people. Because like Dave Decker says here, volatile anger and abusive behavior are always destructive in an intimate relationship, and they always lead to a loss of trust, respect, safety, and intimacy. And you better believe it does. And if you haven't, most of us who've lived through this and have been privy to this information, privy to living like this, and we know what's going on behind the closed doors. We know what's going on in these relationships because we've either experienced it ourselves or we've seen it in our homes or in someone else's home personally, right? And it is so destructive. And we, for people to sit there and just minimize abuse and, just thinking it's okay to punch and kick their children and call them names, sexually use them, or do the same thing to their wife or husband. I mean, it's so incredibly wrong. And it's the abuser's problem, right? And they are the ones that need to get some serious help, because they, for some reason, something in their mind just tells them that it's okay to behave like that. That was my mom and dad all over again. And it was me, because I was continuing on that behavior, that abusive cycle, until I realized I didn't want to hurt anybody, right? So then I started hurting myself, right? And so it's really, really bad. So he says here the following, the following 20 steps from my book, Stopping the Violence, a group model to change men's abusive attitudes and behaviors, are critical in the process to change if you make the decision to do something about anger, abuse, and control issues in your own life, he says. So he's listed a whole bunch. He's listed 20 steps here from his book, and he's got books, and I'm not sure if Michael Obsatz has books, but they do have books on this website listed there, And so you can check that out if you want to. I haven't read any of Dave Decker's books or Michael Obsat's books, but I sure would like to. At some point, these guys really seem to know what they're talking about. And I mean, this website's huge. Like, there's tons and tons of info on here, all kinds of articles and whatnot. So we won't get to it all. There's no way. But I want to touch on some of the main stuff. Number one, he lists here: acknowledge to yourself and others that you have a problem with anger, abuse, and control. He says any meaningful change is impossible without this admission. Then go out and get some help to specifically address these issues. Group treatment can be especially helpful because you can see yourself, your attitudes, and your behaviors in others, and other men can serve as helpful reality tests about the chaos and dysfunction the abuse is creating in your relationship and in your life, right? So that's true, right? And this goes for women too. I mean, he's talking about men specifically, right? But that's okay because, that's fine. The thing is that I think this would benefit women as well. It would benefit everyone, right? We have to acknowledge to ourselves that, if we do have anger management issues, abuse issues, control issues, that we need to acknowledge it to ourselves and others, that we have a problem with it, anger, abuse, and control, and then go out and get some help, right? Number two, address mental health and chemical use issues when they are present in your life. It says if you are depressed, anxious, using drugs, or drinking too much, get some help. If issues like these are left untreated, they will interfere with treatment focused on controlling and abusive behavior. They will also interfere with just getting along in your day-to-day life. Well, I just think it's because it just becomes a co-issue. It's just if you don't treat one but you treat the other, it's like you're treating part of it, but then the other part's just left unchecked, and so it's kind of counterproductive, right? It's almost like it's better to treat the whole thing and just go for it. You know what I mean? Instead of just treating one portion of it and then leaving the other side of it unchecked, right? And that's I've read that on quite a few different websites. These cohabiting kind of co-conditions, I guess that's what it is. Number three, come to know that when you are abusive to others, you are always feeling inadequate, insecure, powerless, and unlovable. People who basically feel okay about themselves do not need to try to assume power and control over other human beings. So, isn't that just the truth? You know what I mean? People that just go on about their lives. They're self-confident. They feel good. Even if they're just regular, average people, like myself, just making a living, working paycheck to paycheck and just hanging out. They just know who they are. They feel comfortable with who they are. They don't feel like they need to hurt people or assume power or control in order to get their way and get their needs met. And I mean, that's nice. I think that's so awesome. Because there's a whole bunch of people out there who don't feel that way, and are always continually trying to make something happen, and in order to do that, because of their own insecurities and feeling powerless and inadequate, they push all their garbage on their partner or these people in their lives, right? And that's what my mom was doing. She was insecure. She felt powerless in the marriage. She felt unloved. She was unloved, actually. My dad was a horrible man. He was absolutely horrible, and that's why we kept telling her to leave, but she wouldn't leave. And it's just very sad because she was not treated properly. And just feeling inadequate. I know she felt inadequate, right? So she became highly abusive to get what she wanted, to assume power and control in that home. Because she was just so sick and tired of the behavior that was going on from my dad. Plus she had been abused as a child. So she just was like, I'm taking over here and I'm going to be in charge and I'm going to hurt people, and that's what she did. And that's really sad, but it's true, and so many of us do that, right? So we have to be really careful about what we're doing so we don't hurt people. The next one was number 4, realize that controlling and abusive behavior hurts you and those you love. And that's where we'll pick up tomorrow. It does. It hurts the ones we love, and it hurts us too. For every time we go out and hurt somebody, we hurt ourselves. Because we hurt the relationships, we break those bonds, we break that, we erode our self-esteem. It says here, right? So we'll pick this up tomorrow. So have a great day, everybody. Reach out and get some help. Don't suffer in silence, right? If you need something, get a hold of me on Facebook, Blog Talk Radio. I'm always generally trying to check my messages and get back to people. And I just say, just never give up. Never give up. Just keep on going. And giving up is not an option. Right? It's just not. And we just need to keep moving forward at our own pace and get help where we can, right? Whether it's counselor, therapist, group support, or call a crisis line if you have to. I'm not beyond that. One of my brothers committed suicide at the age of 33, and another brother died of a drug overdose at the age of 43, and I'm so not beyond calling a crisis line. So, if you need help and you don't have anybody to talk to, call a crisis line, man. Those people do care, and so do I. So take care of yourselves, everybody, and you do count, you do matter, and you matter to me. So take really good care of yourselves, and we'll talk to you later on. I'll be back on tonight, Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, and then again tomorrow on my own show, so you can check out my show page there. So have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.